Here is your WESN News on the hour. I'm Naomi McNish. Thanks for joining us. Here are the headlines. Marshal Montano to receive keys to Lauderhill as Miami Carnival celebrates 40 years. MP Dinesh Rambali advocates for improved mental health services on World Mental Health Day. 14-year-old girl missing in Gonzales, search underway. And police investigate bullying in the case of 15-year-old Jaden Lalchan's death. Now for the details. Reigning Calypso monarch Marshal Montano is set to receive the keys to Lauderhill this Friday during the Miami Broward One Carnival Panorama competition at Central Broward Regional Park. Montano, a familiar face at Miami Carnival, has played various roles throughout its 40-year history. He will also be honored with the key to the city of Miami and a distinguished visitor proclamation on Sunday at the Grand Parade and concert at the Miami-Dade Fairgrounds. The Parade Day concert will feature frequent collaborator and soca queen Patrice Roberts, along with an exciting lineup of artists including Teddyson John, Devon Lyrical Martin, and others. Roberts expressed her excitement for Miami Carnival, highlighting its importance in her career and the continued efforts of the Carnival Committee to keep this celebration alive. Teddyson John and Lyrical, who recently released the track Play Mass, shared their enthusiasm for the upcoming festivities. John emphasized the unique atmosphere of Miami Carnival, where artists and fans come together to celebrate Caribbean culture. On World Mental Health Day, MP for Chaguanas West, Dinesh Rambali, is urging the government to invest in mental health services, especially in rural areas with limited access to care. In his statement, Rambali emphasized the need to strengthen the health system so that everyone can receive necessary support, regardless of their background or location. He highlighted the importance of mental well-being, stating that it is as vital as physical health, yet many individuals suffer in silence due to stigma and lack of resources. Rambali encouraged citizens to seek help when needed, reminding them that asking for assistance is a sign of strength. He called for a collective effort to foster a supportive environment for mental health journey in society. A 14-year-old girl from Gonzales, Haley Charles, has been reported missing. The Hunters Search and Rescue Team, led by Captain Valence Rambarat, is in touch with her family and is actively searching for her. Haley was last seen on Tuesday. The team is urging anyone with information regarding her whereabouts to contact them at 799-1453. The police have clarified that there is no witch hunt in their investigation into the tragic death of 15-year-old Jaden Lalchan, a student at St. Stephen's College in Princestown, who died by suicide on October 3rd after enduring bullying. Assistant Commissioner of Police Wesn Meister confirmed that several individuals, including teachers, students, and parents, have been questioned as part of the inquiry. He anticipates that the investigation will conclude within a week, with findings sent to Director of Public Prosecutions for further action. Meister emphasized that bullying is a criminal offense under the Offenses Against the Person Act and noted an increase in bullying reports to the Southern Division. He plans to launch an anti-bullying campaign in schools across the Southern and Central police districts to address this issue at a national level. Well, that's news to the hour on WESN. I'm Naomi McNish. Thanks for watching.
WESN.
Come travel with us as we explore Diwali across the globe. Diwali is celebrated in many countries worldwide, but do you know the traditions and practices of each nation? From Guyana to Australia, WESN presents Diwali Passport,
October 9th to October 30th, with replays on October 31st.
It's Diwali Passport, a WESN exclusive.
Transform your home with PCU Plus. From stylish furniture to the latest appliances, we have everything you need to create your perfect space. At PCU Plus, we offer fair prices and affordable financing options that are cheaper than hire purchase agreements. With convenient locations in San Fernando, Tobago, Arima, and our lifestyle showroom in Barataria, you're never far from the best deals. Visit PCU Plus today and discover why we're the top choice for quality furniture and appliances. PCU Plus. Quality you trust, prices you'll love. Visit one of our locations or find us online to start transforming your home today.
WESN.
The budget debate is winding up, and of course, it's a platform by which politicians are able to get messages across that may or may not have specifics, direct linkages to the budget. Of course, the budget is a wide cross-section of the country because it touches on many, if not just about most or all aspects of the country. The money that has to be spent to do anything. But some interesting things has happened recently with regards to the budget debate, some things that I just wanted to point out. First of all, one daily newspaper has pointed out that maybe the Prime Minister is using language to indicate, to subtly hint, this might be his last budget debate, or if not, the end might be soon. That it will be interesting because the language is non-committal. So to some extent, it could even be that he's testing the waters to see what the response would be. Let's not forget, President Joe Biden essentially, and some would argue maybe finally, because examples of his cognitive decline have been apparent for years now, but it's reached the point where the public is no longer willing to accept a man, not necessarily of his age, but rather someone who is displaying the fact that age has caught up to him. And in many fields, sports, entertainment, even in business, there will be examples where sometimes people kind of hold on to their careers maybe for too long, and they're not necessarily willing to admit, maybe it would have been better to bow out earlier rather than later. Now, with regards to the Prime Minister hinting his end, I will say that for me personally, it is both slightly exciting and slightly terrifying. Exciting because at the very least it's going to be change. And to some extent I think we need change. The terrifying part comes in because it's not guaranteed to be changed for the better. It could very easily be changed for the worse. That doesn't necessarily mean that I don't want to see change, but to some extent maybe there's room to debate the timing of the change, because the timing of the change will then have some effect on what kind of change it would be. Who is positioned now to take over? Will the internal fighting reach to a zenith? Is his bowing out, if he does so before the next general, premature? The internal elections don't line up very well, which I do wonder why that is so. It would make more sense that, like the American presidential election, you pick your candidate before the election, not some random year in between elections, and then now you're stuck in a situation where, well, what do you do if he retires before the election, but then technically his term as political leader is up in the middle of a term in office? Why they don't line up, I don't know. It's same thing potentially for the political leader of the UNC. I'm not entirely sure about the timing on that. That's something interesting. A couple other things came out this time from the Minister of Finance. One, he has called what Hyatt has done foolishness, which is interesting. And to me, that could be a sign that he is upset, not because Hyatt did something that he may or may not have disagreed with, that he may or may not have approved, may or may not. but rather they did something that, whether it is legitimately linked back to him or not, he may have concerns that it made him look bad. And that might be the main reason why he's upset. In fact, all too often, politics is driven not with regards necessarily, the ugly side of politics, not with regards necessarily to corruption and favoritism and nepotism, but a lot of times the ugly side of politics is driven by, well, who made me look bad? Who is one-upping me? Worse yet when it's someone in your own party, because then you have direct ways to go after them behind the scenes that will not be seen by the public. So it insulates the fighting. And if you are politically better connected, then you will be able to do that person a lot of damage. And the key point is usually the people that make someone look bad would be the young up-and-comers who are trying to do something positive. The problem is, the more you try to do positive, the more you make your colleagues look as though they're useless. Now, this is not necessarily the case here, but it's along those lines slightly. And that's why, given that theory, I do think that the minister is potentially actually upset over this. Again, not because of the decision, but rather because of the public outcry for the decision. He can't support it, he can't defend it, so it's better to decry it. The NAD, it's most likely had very little to do with him, even though it seems as though, to some extent, at least in different ways, it's in line with some of the policies and decision-making that the government and the banks and the financial situation of the country is going towards. But with that said, the last thing I want to touch on is the fact that the Minister of Finance called the opposition leader shameless, which may or may not be true. I'm not here to debate that statement, although one could argue perhaps such language in Parliament might be a little bit too far, might. The real thing is, I find it very interesting, we just had an example of a UNC MP calling out the government bench and the Prime Minister for bullying. Without realizing the implication, he opened himself up for his own colleague to call him out on his bullying of her and her peers. And now the Minister of Finance, I think, this is something that I believe at times politicians are aware of, but when they get hot-headed, maybe they forget. You have to be careful you're not pot calling kettle black. Because he calls the opposition leader shameless. Whether it's warranted or not, I would argue what happened with the Auditor General is generally far more shameless than anything the opposition leader has done during her time as opposition leader. Now, if you want to go back into the archives of when she was Prime Minister, that's a different story, because I'm pretty sure that's not what he was referring to. He's referring to something more recent. And I'm referring to an action of his, which is more recent. I'm not looking back into the archives to see, what he may or may not have done 10 years ago. I'm talking about what he did this year. It was, on the outside looking in, something that seemed to be extremely, extremely shameless. And if you want to act as if you have no shame, you know what, to some extent, that's fine. I can understand that. I may not agree with it. But at the very least, don't then come out and call other people shameless, because it undermines your credibility and integrity, and it says at the end of the day, I don't really have any standards. So when I tell you to believe what I'm saying, the words that are coming out of my mouth, the fact of the matter is, given that I am shameless, I'm shameless in decrying other people's potential shamelessness, that means I'm standardless, and if I have no standards, I probably have no principles. If I have no principles, then what I'm saying may or may not be true. That's just the implications. I'm not saying that he lies. I'm just saying He's setting himself up to be perceived by the general public, in my estimation, as someone whose words we may need to question more regularly than we already do. Which is why I will close with a saying that I use every now and then. Transparency works for you, and a lack of transparency will always work against you. And with that said, let's get into the meat of today's matters as we bring on today's Daily Review. All right, one thing, I think some people that watch the show regularly enough might actually be surprised. I haven't spoken about this yet. It's been carded. I just haven't reached it, and I don't want the week to close out without mentioning at least some aspects of it, because there were two recent, I guess you could say high-profile situations in the news of babies being victims of physical violence. Now, in the first case, there was the viral video where a baby was recorded having adults stomp on it, and the cops, at least this week, they got the green light to charge for attempted murder. And this, I believe, is a 1-year-old or a 1.5-year-old. I didn't look at the video. I did not search for the video. To be honest, I did not even want to see the video. That is, I cannot digest too much more of things like this. This is beyond the pale for me. Regardless of the survival of the child, I hope that the system will successfully, legitimately prosecute them to the full extent of the law. Because I don't know what else to say about people that would stomp a baby. But that's one thing. And I have these things together to make a note of the fact that why are these things happening? Because this week, recently, of course, there's the other situation where a man killed the mother and child. Autopsy, apparently, I believe it says the child died from a chop to the neck. It's a 14-month-year-old baby, 1 year and 2 months. And words do not describe what I want to know. Words do not do justice. I can't use words to describe this human being. Single chop to the neck. Kills the mother. Now, I believe he is in line to be charged with murder. Yeah. Now, ACP Meister, he has come out to say, because a lot of this story is also complaints that the police did nothing. And I have to be careful here. Now, this is what I believe the ACP was going for. He's not saying that the police did everything right, because some of the claims with regards to the response of one police officer that took, I believe, what might have been the most recent call to the police, or one of the more recent calls to the police station, where the police officer may have berated, I think it was either the victim or the victim's sister. Apparently, he's looking into that, and I don't think he's accepting that. If that happened, he's decrying that. But he did point out the fact that a protection order was put in place as recently as 2 days before the murder. So now he's bringing up the question, and I think, unfortunately, it's not about victim blaming. He is not saying it's her fault. But to some degree, these domestic violence situations are very tricky in the sense of, too often, the victims don't always seek out their best interests. And to what extent was she able to avoid the perpetrator? And to what extent was she not doing so? We don't know. But to some extent, the police, they had a protection order. It was 2 days before, so it wasn't a case where they had a protection order and it lapsed and nobody wanted to reinstitute it or anything like that. So then the other side of the equation is exactly, was there anything wrong with the police response outside of the potential call to the police station where a WPC berated the victim or her family member? I can't remember who called. Because that could have been a failure of the response in order to enforce the protection order, right? And yes, I could see a world where the police taking the phone call may have been frustrated because to that police officer, it seemed as though the victim was not helping herself. But even if that was the case, and I think this is one of the things that the ACP is pointing out, it's still unacceptable for the police officer to be frustrated in that situation and not respond appropriately. Right? Now, granted, a lot of what I'm saying there is based on my own assumptions and read on the situation. The details as it comes out, if it comes out, may be different. But it's just to show that these situations with domestic violence is not so straightforward as a robbery or a gang killing, right? Which is why I agree with the ACP. The response of the officers still needs to be looked into, regardless of what the family did or did not do, correct or incorrect, because there is a world where perhaps if certain police officers responded differently, the situation may not guaranteed, but may not be what it is. Now, the Prime Minister has come out to say that, look, don't blame me for this. And generally speaking, some amount of blame has to be put on the government, on the various services in national security, the executive heads of those services, the Minister of National Security, and the Prime Minister and Cabinet in general for the general situation of crime. But a domestic case like this, it's really, really hard for me personally to say that the authorities have a significant amount of the blame, right? I'm not willing to go there because I would argue even if our crime situation was better, this murder potentially could have still taken place. Now, the response to the police officers could have potentially happened even if the executive of the police and the Prime Minister and Cabinet and the Minister of National Security were all doing their jobs reasonably excellent. That's a hell of a descriptive term. But bad cops could happen. Bad things could still happen. Domestic violence could still happen, right? Which is why I think the lion's share of the blame comes down to, first and foremost, the perpetrator. And if the Prime Minister or other officials have any sort of blame for this specific situation, I would argue there would be other people throughout the life of this person, of this perpetrator, who also share some of that blame. Because again, this is not like a gang violence situation. This is not like a murder for money situation. This is not like a robbery, homicide gone wrong situation, a kidnapping gone wrong. This is a domestic situation where one man made a choice that I honestly don't care how enraged or insane he was in the moment. It's beyond understanding. And to some extent, we need to not try to lessen the situation of his guilt by saying, oh, well, it's society's fault, the leadership's fault, this fault. No. When it comes to such a domestic situation, because, and I'll close with this, one of the things that I am getting personally upset by is that it's been reported, I think at least in 2 daily newspapers nowadays, suspect is sorry for what he did. Except, and I could be reading into this wrong because the context could be wrong based on the report, but one of the daily papers says that his family member was trying to tell him he shouldn't do that. And he said in response, he's sorry for what he did, but all you hold a lawyer for me, I beg you. And that tells me, most likely, what he's sorry for is not doing it, but he's sorry for the situation he finds himself in. He's sorry for the fact that now he has to go through this consequence. He's sorry for the aftermath. He's sorry for getting caught more than he's sorry for what he did. Because I don't know about you, but if there's 2 ways where this could kind of maybe sort of, in the very thinnest of ways, make sense. It's an outright malicious act where he knew what he's doing, in which case, hold a lawyer for me is just a continuation of the maliciousness, right? I don't want to face the consequences of what I did. Or you temporarily lose sanity and you do something extreme, and then when you regain your senses, you should be admonished with yourself for what you did. Usually people like that are not necessarily looking to try to avoid the consequences of their actions. And yet here he is. He wants a lawyer. Now, granted, even if he was guilty and is willing to say that he's guilty, it will probably still be a good idea for him to have legal representation to ensure that his rights, because he technically still has rights, are not trampled on in this situation, which they could be. But I don't expect that he's thinking that far ahead, to be honest. Maybe I'm wrong. And that's what upsets me. You did something that I don't know if society could ever forgive him, to be honest. I would not necessarily demand that of his family, particularly of his immediate family, but for the rest of us, please understand, this is beyond the pale. Now it seems as though he wants to get off. He wants to try to lessen the consequence for something like this. This is not an accidental killing of a stranger. And even then, it's questionable to what extent we should agree with trying to get off. All right, before I myself get further into the story. Moving on, a quick thing, this might have been something that came out of, I think last week or earlier this week, and it's ongoing. And I mentioned it before, but there was a situation where, in the police service, where one inspector who is suspended and who has been up for criminal charges because he was the head of SORT when 2 suspects died in his custody. He is complaining about the fact that he is not up for promotion. He is complaining about the promotion process. Again, he has potential charges against him, if not already against him. Criminal. An investigation at the very least is going on with regards to his conduct as the head of SORT during that time period, and he's suspended. But he's complaining about his promotion. Cool. Other inspectors apparently have also now come up with regards to issues about the assessment process to promotion to the rank of Assistant Superintendent of Police. And the thing is, there's 2 issues here. One is the fact that it seems as though there's nothing in place to prevent an officer from being promoted, or an officer in Mark Hernandez's situation from having a reasonable expectation of being promoted. And dare I ask, is this just another sign that the police service is not based on merit? Because, arguably speaking, in the last, 2 years, because he was suspended back under the tenure of Gary Griffith. So we've had Erla for almost 2 years, and I think McDonald Jacobs for a year. So we have at least 3 years now. What merit, what meritorious service or action has he done within the last 2 to 3 years to warrant his promotion? So then what you're telling me is it's all based on seniority, not on merit. Because that's what the rules apparently encourage. Because he could be suspended, unless you're telling me he went back to active duty and then was suspended again. He could be suspended, he has no merit to his name in recent history, and somehow he's in line for promotion, when he has something that, if this was, let's just say the American military, he has something that could lead to him being dishonorably discharged, meaning no pension, no benefits, no nothing. Dishonorably discharged. But based on the laws and the rules, the court is taking his claim seriously, because to be fair, the flip side of that is there are others who are questioning the situation, other officers. And I don't know what to make of it, to be honest. It's just another promotion controversy in national security. Not the police service alone, national security. We see this in the Defense Force. We see this in the regiment. We see this, I think, in the Coast Guard and the Air Guard. Well, to a less extent, the Air Guard. And we see this in the police service. What is going on? And I think what's happening is there's maybe some attempts to promote on merit, but the system is not built for that. So when they tell us meritorious service, blah, 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 because it's not built into the rules, first of all, we have to question exactly what merit are we talking about. Is it actual merit or brown-nosing merit? And secondly, to what extent, I mean, if you are serious about identifying this as a problem and solving it, change the rules, change the processes, update the system. Don't just try to do some informal workaround, because now I'm fed up seeing lawsuits over promotions. In all arms of national security, I don't think there's the prison service, regiment, there's not one untouched by this foolishness. It's a failure of basic HR and administration for paramilitary and military service. This should not be that hard. One would think after one or two cases, somebody would figure out, hey, you know, we have an issue here because seemingly it happens a lot, so maybe we should do something about it. And then you want to ask why we have issues with national security, where it seems as though sometimes officers and agents of the state, soldiers and the like, they're not doing their job very well. Well, this is part of the reason why, not the whole reason, part. Take a break, and when we come back, we'll continue the conversations here on WESN. Stay tuned.
Come travel with us as we explore Diwali across the globe. Diwali is celebrated in many countries worldwide, but do you know the traditions and practices of each nation? From Guyana to Australia, WESN presents Diwali Passport.
October 9th to October 30th, with replays on October 31st.
It's Diwali Passport, a WESN exclusive.
Transform your home with PCU Plus. From stylish furniture to the latest appliances, we have everything you need to create your perfect space. At PCU Plus, we offer fair prices and affordable financing options that are cheaper than hire purchase agreements. With convenient locations in San Fernando, Tobago, Arima, and our lifestyle showroom in Barataria, you're never far from the best deals. Visit PCU Plus today and discover why we're the top choice for quality furniture and appliances. PCU Plus. Quality you trust, prices you'll love. Visit one of our locations or find us online to start transforming your home today.
And we're back here talking about the WESN, Sean Michael Small, joined by the host of AM Prime, one of the founding co-hosts of Talking Points. He is, of course, the man with the slick hair this morning, Mr. Keaton Shaw. Good morning, Keaton. How are you going this morning?
Good morning, Sean Michael Small. I'm doing well. How are you doing? How are you keeping?
Your hair was looking so much slicker when it was coming forward, and then you went and brushed it to the side, and like, come on. I just, now you're looking a bit more like your usual self, whereas when I saw you initially, you were like, yeah, I'm Keaton Shaw. And there's a saying that I can't say on here. But anyway, with that said, maybe afterwards when the show ends, you could maybe guess where I was going with that. But we can't say that on air. We cannot. A lot of talk has come out from this budget, and I mentioned some of it. But there's a lot that I did not mention that you've brought up, and I find this very interesting. I myself, there's a part of me that I find it... there's a lot of humor and irony in some of these things, but technically they should be serious. And you pointed out there was that whole, well, allegations have been thrown out by the government bench, implying, or in some cases directly, saying that the opposition members are up to no good in various ways. You said we could start with what Minister Hines said with regards to a high-ranking UNC official plotting to murder someone. I would just like to point out that the American government has an official document that says government officials are involved in human trafficking. So if the minister wants to play this game, technically, it could go the other way as well. But what do you make of Minister Hines' accusation?
Well, I just always find it quite intriguing how in a budget debate, all of these things pop up. It's just amazing how in these debates, all of a sudden you see all these accusations and you see all these allegations that are thrown everywhere. But bearing in mind that we are in silly season as well. You see, the Minister of National Security has very little to speak about when it comes to his successes as a Minister of National Security or as a minister as a whole, because he put it this way, Foster Cummins has done a far superior job to him as Minister of Youth Development and National Service as compared to when Fitzgerald Hines was in that chair. But the reason why I thought these comments were very intriguing, again, stressing the point that it's amazing how these things just pop up all of a sudden in these debates, and it's silly season. Sean, honestly, these are very, very serious allegations. Now, no names were called, but he said it is a higher-ranking UNC official. And the minister said, a report was made to me, right? These are his words. A report was made to me, and then I called the police, and the police investigated and continue to investigate as we speak now. I think it's premature to make any sort of public comments when it comes to an investigation that is taking place, but you're making allegations that a high-ranking UNC official was involved in plotting to murder someone. Now, again, if these allegations are true and the police investigation surface something, we need to know about it. That is very important. But standing up in Parliament and making these comments, what's going to happen next? What's going to come out of it? I think even more so what stood out to me, Sean, is the mere fact that he said a report was made to me. Mm-hmm. And then he went on to say, a criminal in this country swore to the police that a UNC high official, whatever UNC high official is, in the background you heard Stuart Young saying a former senator, paid said criminal $60,000 to commit a murder outside, I'm assuming Trinidad and Tobago. That's what I'm saying out of the statements. The matter's under investigation. Who wants to find out could go. This is what we are talking about, the treachery and deceit. That's why I don't listen to them. Sean, again, a criminal reached out to the Minister of National Security. Where is that criminal? Mm-hmm. Is that criminal behind bars? Is that criminal behind bars, or is this some sort of deal that is being made that you give us information and we protect you? Again, very, very serious accusations, not taking away from it. I hope the police investigation really, when it is completed, I hope some truth comes out. It's very, very serious. But how easy is it for a criminal to get in touch with a government minister, let alone
I now
the
want to
Minister
ask that.
of Security?
I now
How-
wanted to ask that.
Yeah, no, seriously, how easy is it for a criminal to get in touch with a government minister, let alone the Minister of National Security? Is said criminal behind bars this morning as we speak? Has said criminal been charged for being a criminal? It is illegal to be affiliated with a gang. You don't even have to be a full-fledged gang member, right? But the laws of Trinidad and Tobago state that. What is it in respect to this criminal? Sean, you and I have tried on a number of occasions to get an interview with the Minister of National Security, which has been very difficult. Yet it's very easy, it would seem, for a criminal, only I say criminals, to get in touch with the Minister of National Security. How easy is it for criminals really to get in touch with these ministers, boy? I really couldn't help but laugh. I said, did the minister realize exactly what he was saying when he stood up in Parliament and made such comments? When he stood up in Parliament and made such accusations? But then again, parliamentary privilege is a hell of a thing, isn't it?
The thing is, and what you said, that's a very important point, because the implication is it's someone that he knows in some capacity. Now, there's always the chance, however unlikely, that it literally was some random hooligan that was able to speak to him, but he has identified the individual as a criminal. So again, that does make me think that he is known to him in some capacity. So then if he knows that this person is a criminal, how is it that he's willing to interact with him so freely that said person is willing to say, oh,
Let me just
I was
correct
involved
myself.
in a murder
I
felony
asked the
plot.
question whether or not he was in prison, and again, Stuart Young, being the very well seasoned attorney at law senior counsel that he is, in the background had to mumble when the minister mentioned a criminal in the prison. So again, let me just correct myself. I'm assuming, based off of what defense attorney Stuart Young mentioned behind Minister Fitzgerald Hines, that said criminal is in the prison.
Okay, all right, and here's the thing, 60,000 for murder outside, yes, that does actually make sense, because as far as I'm aware, and I don't know this for sure, it's not like I'm connected, right? But 60,000 for a murder down in TNT would actually be overpaying by a considerable amount, which is to tell you how sad it is.
We're debating the cost of a hit. Is that what you're doing?
I'm not debating. I'm telling you, $60,000 is way more than what it would cost for a gang member to kill somebody. I say that just again to point out how bad things are, right? Listen. Every now and then you hear things. But more importantly, so this is why I think, yes, it's interesting. First of all, how did this even come up, right? Because this seems like a very weird situation where criminals are going to come and say, yeah, I was offered money to kill someone outside. Like, there's a lot to this story, if we even assume parts of it to be true, that it just leaves us asking more questions. That's point number one. Point number two, and more importantly, and you were alluding to this earlier, isn't it funny how they could never speak about active investigations ever, except when it comes time to say things to imply the immoral behavior of their political opponents? Because, listen, at the end of the day, Gary Griffith, what did we hear? We heard nothing substantial, just implications. And then part of the election, the local community elections campaigning was after the elections, you will hear more. I was there, you saw it, I was there, I asked the Prime Minister the night of, where is the more, right? And there was no more because it was before the courts and he couldn't say anything. Well, now we have the minister here doing something similar because he said it's under investigation. Why, as you pointed out, why is he talking about it? Why is he talking about it? It's under investigation.
Parliamentary privilege is a hell of a thing. That's why he can come and say, listen, and this is the thing, the words that he said suggest that the criminal was in, said criminal, whomever this individual is, and again, we're assuming it is in the prison based off of Stuart Young's comments in the background, was able to get in touch with him. That is the most amazing thing to me. That is and I'm wondering how many more criminals are in touch with any of these ministers or by extension, the Minister of National Security. You have to understand something. It's a very serious allegation that has been made, and I really hope an investigation concludes, brings some sort of conclusion.
But Keaton,
But the Minister of National Security, Sean, let me ask you a question, right? What can, in a budget debate, in respect to justifying the operations under the Ministry of National Security in the previous fiscal year, right, in trying to justify expenditure, where the money has been spent and why it has been spent, how it has been spent, could you point to any successes on the part of the Minister of National Security, apart from holding some competition for people to come and sing against crime? You're singing out against crime and you win some money at the end of it. Apart from that, could you point to any successes on the part of the Minister of National Security? Here he stands in a budget debate, putting forward such accusations, again, cannot speak to any sort of credible achievement on his part as Minister of National Security, or by extension in respect to the operations. You might say I am being very harsh, but at the end of the day, given the commentary from Fitzgerald Hines, even when Dr. Keith Rowley was leader of the opposition and speaking about the government's role in dealing with crime, right? Given all the previous commentary and all that has been stated to us, you cannot take this man seriously at all.
well,
I don't think he even realizes what he says when he is saying it.
oh wait, this could go further, Keaton, because remember, Stuart Young said in prison, right? So to what extent is this Minister Hines speaking of his own regard? Is this a cabinet strategy by which Minister Young helped craft and the Prime Minister approved? And here's the real implication of it. Because it's someone that's already incarcerated, right? So he's in the prison, right? So I assume the minister may have been touring the prison, because how else would a prisoner have a chance to confide, random prisoner number 42, have a chance to confide something with the Minister of National Security? So someone who's already incarcerated is just magically going to come and say, you know, one of your political opponents paid me to commit a murder outside. When you think about it, it basically sounds like this prisoner was looking to mama guide the government, and they were mama guide enough to think, oh, we have a credible incident to
John,
now we could use to lambast. Meanwhile, this prisoner might be lying out of his teeth because he wants to get some part of his sentence commuted, and he's hoping to earn some favor. And I don't think it's limited to just Minister Hines.
The Minister of National Security and Pakistan government ministers think that the majority of citizens in Trinidad and Tobago have idiots slapped across their forehead. Because I really don't think he thought this through before standing in Parliament. But again, I'll put it this way, he can say whatever he wants. He can say whatever he wants in Parliament and get away with it. They can come and project whatever nonsense they want to spew and get away with it. And this is the point that is being made. A report was made to me. Right? A report was made to me. You are suggesting that it is the because then and again the minister says that
in the future, similar to the disappearing file that caused the state to be hit with a $20 million penalty, or awarding 9 formerly accused $20 million in damages because they failed to defend their position, because the file disappeared. And when the file reappeared, we didn't get the subsequent press conference from the AG. And there are other examples of much to do about nothing, apparently, because the result is silence when time passes. They mum about the situations, right? They don't talk about the situations. They don't want to talk. So again, all of this stuff about Guy Griffith, we ain't hearing nothing about it. Not one fart. And the longer the silence continues, the more it seems as though accusations like this, which this thing that the minister has said, it's just hot air, smoke and mirrors. And as you pointed out, it goes to the credibility then of the speaker of that moment. And it's more than one speaker, because not just the minister, it's also his cabinet colleague that wanted to give his 2 cents in, saying that it was allegedly a former senator who made this payment to a man who is a current prisoner.
So let's bring up another case, or another allegation that was put forward in this budget debate, and this time from the Minister of Rural Development.
Oh, sorry, Keaton, I just wanted to close by saying, you know, technically speaking, if the minister wants to play that game, you and I could easily say that many people have told us, have confided in us of corruption in government. I just want to throw that out there.
We have, you know, we've heard of many allegations of corruption within the government. We've been, you know, many people have spoken to us and told us about that. But you see, we can't really make any police reports because we don't necessarily have any evidence going forward. You know, but again, Sean, we don't have parliamentary privilege, so we have to be very, very careful what we say, right? Because then and again, sedition might be used very conveniently in Trinidad and Tobago, right? So again, you know, we just have to be very, very careful about that. But you know, another point that was raised in respect to another allegation came from Faris Arawi, and he, by the way, is an attorney at law who was a bit smarter, I think, in his commentary, a bit smarter, because he said on October 8th, during his contribution to the budget debate, and I quote, "We have discovered a significant amount of fraud in one regional corporation in particular, which is not controlled by a government entity." Now, put it this way, he's not saying it exactly because, again, he's being very smart with foolishness. But if it's not one government entity, who is that regional corporation controlled by? Right? Who is that regional corporation controlled?
Wait, there's a further thing to unpack in this statement, right? Because apparently, I think what everyone is assuming, and rightfully so, the intended statement is not controlled by a PNM entity. Because he's saying not controlled by a government entity. So I would like to know when the PNM apparently became synonymous with the government as a permanent fixture. You know, we are ruled permanently by the PNM, like that, because that's what it says. Is the government limited only to the PNM? According to, I know that's not what he intended, but you would have said he was a little bit smarter. I don't know, buddy.
No, hold on. The reason why I said he was a little bit smarter, right?
I know why.
Listen, hold on. I didn't finish his statement, sir. He went on to say, "I can't say too much more about the aspects as there are laws against tipping off, but I can tell you that police intervention will be and is involved in some of these matters." All right? That's what I'm saying. He's probably always a bit more smart. He says, "I can't say too much more because there are laws against tipping off." You know, but I can tell you that there is and there will be police.
But I mean, technically speaking, a UNC-controlled local government body is a government entity. So I guess you kind of was getting there on your own, right? When you said, what does he mean? What is, you know? So obviously, I guess it's a local government body controlled by people who are not elected somehow for their position, by criminals. I don't know, because that if we go by the face value of what he said can be interpreted, and I think if we should interpret it literally until he decides to give us a follow-up, that it's not a UNC entity that he is talking about, it's something else apparently. He is calling out Keaton corruption by a criminal element that has been unknown to us so far. This mythical local government body controlled by a non-government entity. This is a serious accusation that we have to take seriously, Keaton. We have never heard anything like this before.
No, but what is amazing to me? He said police intervention is involved, right? Police intervention. They have uncovered. Police intervention is involved and will be involved. I have not heard of any reports of any individuals, right, as we speak, at least within the corporation, whether it be the actual executive management of the corporation or anything below, being charged in respect to said fraud. So again, it's amazing how these things come out in a budget debate. And you realize it's never any government entities or anything of the government involved. Go back to Fitzgerald Hines for a second, right?
Of the majority governments.
The man can't focus on anything to do with his operations as Minister of National Security because, put it this way, it seems with all the criminal elements having a happy dandy time in TNT, there is no Minister of National Security. That's what it comes across as. So he has to focus on the opposition. But again, very serious allegations. Let's see what happens. Then the Minister of Rural Development and Local Government comes out and says it's in a very smart man way. But who came up with that smart man thing in the first place?
I was now thinking that.
In a very, very smart man way, and put forward these things as well. And I still am yet to hear of anyone, because he said it's serious fraud.
Yep.
I mean, any form of fraud is serious.
Well,
but he said serious fraud.
First,
So I just want to know what.
Kisan, first of all, you think that if they were looking into a political opponent guilty of or potentially actually committing a crime, not just allegations to throw out there to the public, that somebody want to figure out some way to leak something to start the media, not necessarily everything, but to just give a little hint to the media to look into this, to report on it? You think that wouldn't have happened already? That's point number one. Point number two, with regards to corruption in one regional corporation. Let's be frank. As I mentioned before, people have said, people believe that there's widespread corruption. Like, I think if you try to sell the public, oh, one regional corporation, regardless of who runs it, there's corruption. And let's be fair, the intention by Minister Awari is to say that it's a UNC corporation, right? That's what's the reasonable interpretation. Just his use of language was technically incorrect, and I'm going to have fun with that probably for the next few weeks. But regardless, you wanna sell us that only one local government corporation has corruption? Well, as far as I'm aware, one of the reasons why there was a whole thing to take land and build whatever preceded property tax away from local government by the then administration of Patrick Manning, or before, I can't remember which one exactly did it, was because of corruption, or rather the convenience excuse of corruption, right? Let's be frank. If you want to say that one local government body has corruption, I would argue, well, they all probably have corruption in some shape and form. It's just that you are technically saying we could only find one.
You know, Sean, whether or not there is corruption, there clearly is. I don't know, we are being a mama guide when it comes to local governments as a whole. Here you are as Minister of Local Government and Rural Development, speaking about regional corporations and a significant amount of fraud taking place. And yet I have not learned of anything beyond this. Again, something being said in Parliament, and you're saying it in a very smart man way. Secondly, why not speak to the fact that we all have to pay property tax? Well, most people anyway have to pay property tax. That money was supposed to go towards local government. I am still paying property tax, and local government reform has not happened as yet. So exactly, where is that money going to? Why not stand up and speak about these things? Why not address us and let us know, as Minister of Local Government, as Minister who is charged with this, why not let us know where we are with respect to local government reform? Tell me what is taking place there. You know, going back to Fitzgerald Heights, tell me the $100 million that was supposed to be allocated to the Defense Force or the Army, you know, to deal with crime. Was that money ever allocated? If so, what was it actually used for? What was done with that? What is the success coming out of that? Tell me, as Minister of National Security, because you have Keith Scotland as well, who's specifically charged with TTPS now, how many active investigations are taking place? How many cold cases exist, right? How many cases have been solved? What is it in respect to proactive policing that is taking place? Then you want to speak, and this is the thing that frustrates me, right? We are in 2024, right? This budget presentation, you know, this is what frustrates me. We're speaking about national security, and the government spoke about increasing, by the way, Sean, you pointed it out last week, there was a decrease in the allocation to the Ministry of National Security. But we are spending more money in respect to resources, be it patrol vessels, unmanned aerial drones as well. All those are said good things. In 2024, we're speaking about those things. You're not speaking about the fact that you as a government have failed to maintain many of these vessels, right? But you're also coming back and telling me what the government did between 2010 and 2015. I am long past that. I am long past that. If you want to come and speak to me now about what the government did between 2000 and 2015 or 2010 on, I am long past that. And whilst I'm saying that we must never forget these things, why is it that you as government, you have never actually put forward all these accusations, all this mismanagement and allegations of corruption? What have you done in your years in office, right? Because 2025 will be 10 years in office. What have you done to actually resolve all these issues of allegations between 2010 and 2015? What have you done to actually address corruption in Trinidad and Tobago? All these allegations. And these are the things I'm speaking about. He's standing up in a budget debate. He's saying all these things. We're going back to 2010 to 2015 again. Everything is to do with the opposition involved in doing this and doing that and the other. We ain't getting anywhere, are we? We simply aren't getting anywhere. They put it this way. The current government cannot look at themselves in a mirror. They can't look at themselves in a mirror and say, we gave the best for TNT. Because if they do, they simply really, something is off with their conscience. I really don't know.
Here's the thing. They made that promise. And I'm like you, I'm there with you. $100 million to the Defense Force. That was in the last budget. They made that commitment.
It wasn't in the budget. That was in Prime Minister's conversations. You remember?
Right.
Prime Minister's conversations in Barrett.
Or to follow up with the budget. Right. Okay. And they made that claim. And then what did we hear about it? What was the follow-up? Nothing. Zero. Zilch. Nada. Here's the thing. So not only now do we have to look at everything that they promise us, because they've already shown, hey, we're going to make promises, you know, not even campaign promises, just in the middle of the year promises. We can't even necessarily follow through with that. But then also, and here's the bad part, I could understand if you say you want to do a thing and then you have to come back and say, well, we can't do it anymore. Right? The THA, the current executive, they did that. They made campaign promises, and then when they saw the reality, they had to come and say, well, you know, the money's not there, we can't do these things. And I could respect that because they are facing the fire of having to own up to the fact that the promises they made, they can't keep, not necessarily through a fault of their own, right? Regardless, whether it is through a fault of their own or not, the government couldn't even have the decency, or rather the intelligence to know how to come to the public now and say, you know that $100 million we promised to the Defense Force, we have to scrap it. And then by be willing to say, listen, we have to scrap it, this is why we have to scrap it, it gives us a degree of accountability. It's still not the best thing that we want to hear, but at the very least, it would make you look a little bit more trustworthy than just, well, let's not say nothing. Let's just hope that they forget. Because now, every time they promise something, we have to look at it through the lens of how likely is this just empty words because they want to have something to say. Because this budget debate, it seems as though, as you pointed out, rural development is talking in a budget debate not about the lack of progress with local government reform, but about, oh, well, there was corruption. So don't look at our lackings, blame them for this minor thing. Listen, all of what he said could be true. That still does not excuse the lack of performance, similar to the Minister of National Security. Don't blame me about crime. Look at this one allegation of this one potential senator, according to Stuart Young, who has not been named, so we have no way to assess the situation. And it's like, listen, there could be a UNC senator who may have paid $60,000 for an assassination outside of the country. That has nothing to do with the failings of the national security apparatus of the country. Both things could be true at the same time. That doesn't excuse you. So that's all I'm saying. It's look at the hand. Don't look at don't look at the man behind the curtain, right? And the nonsense that he's doing. Just look at the hand, take the bluff, right? Take the distraction, take the mama guy. Because
I told you, Sean, when Fitzgerald Hines made such allegations in Parliament, not only did he have parliamentary protection, but he did not think it through what he was saying and what he was presenting. And that's why I believe all of them think that we have idiots slapped across our forehead. But I hope Trinbagonians are actually listening and not falling for the politics, sir. I really, really hope that they are listening to what is being presented by those who are charged with managing our current affairs. Not managing the affairs between 2010 and 2015, not managing the affairs of any previous administration before that, but the affairs when they were re-elected to office in 2015. In 2020. I really hope that they are listening to those who are charged with that. Again, Fitzgerald Hines as Minister of National Security making such comments, it seems as though it's really easy for a criminal or criminals to get in touch with him. And that's the interpretation, that's the impression I got, because it's funny, the $60,000 being paid, that became secondary to me at that point.
Yeah.
When I was actually taking in this particular story and his contribution, that became secondary to me. at that point. But it's very serious nonetheless, and I really hope that a police investigation comes to some conclusion, and I really hope that we hear more about this in respect to the same thing put forward by Faris Arawi in respect to a significant amount of fraud in one regional corporation, and that is not controlled by a government entity. Again, smart man boy, right? I really hope that we hear further from this, because people still have their job, but there's a significant amount of fraud taking place. You can't make too many comments at this point in time because there is police intervention and there will be police intervention involved in some of these matters. You're assuming that there's going to be more police intervention, or are you assuming that there's going to be more police intervention, or are you directing the police already? I wait to hear more of what's happening there as well. But in these debates, it's amazing how these allegations come up, and you know, really, it's just silly. It's just silly what we're hearing and what we're experiencing.
Keaton, I will roll with the silliness. I will roll with the silliness. And just serious, I know that the minister meant UNC. Now let's roll with the silliness. Keaton, it's not being controlled by a government entity. We need to get to the bottom of this. What private sector individual thinks they can control a local government corporation or criminal entity? We need to look into the minister's words to find the veracity of truth. And the reason why I'm enjoying myself, right, taking the literal interpretation of what he said, is because I think that these government ministers and members of the opposition, parliamentarians on the whole, need to understand the importance of the accuracy of their speech. Because if they can't understand that and they want to be sloppy and willy-nilly and they don't even know how to pronounce the names of different regions in the country where you may or may not have apparently a serious government project to be undertaken, how are we supposed to take you seriously? You want to have a project in Buko, you don't know what Buko, you don't know how to pronounce Buko?
You know, Sean, to me, honestly speaking, I just laughed and I played it off. I was like, that's minor. You know, even when you know, the Minister of Health unfortunately lost his goal bearer and saying this is where crime has reached in the country, when you know, people, where there are gangs operating in secondary schools, right, where there are gangs where children are losing their lives, or while in school they have a gunfight taking place right outside the school compound, you know. But you saying this is where crime has reached, and I bring this up once more because I really hope that Trinbagonians do not fall don't fall for us anymore. Understand what is being pushed you, and just understand how out of touch, how completely out of touch some of these government officials are, and just how much they think we are as idiots. Don't fall for it, you know. They think that they, you know, as long as they spew this and we fall for it, they can keep doing it. Stop falling for Trinbago. Look at all that is being put to you and just realize that we actually going to justify government statements and all these stupid comments if we fall for the level of foolishness. If we fall for it, really, come on.
We have to open the phone lines now, but I'll just add that Minister Dale saying what he said could be applied to the government. I know he didn't intend for it to be applied to the government, but the government majority. But it can be. But with that said, we should be opening up the phone lines right now. You could call in, have your say. Don't be afraid to interrupt the conversation. We can obviously go on because there was more that was said in Parliament for the budget debate. And again, and I think to some extent you have to wonder, I understand there's going to be some amount of political campaigning with regards to the budget, but I wonder if maybe now it has gone too far. So the phone lines are open. You could call in. You could contribute to the situation. You could speak about other topics. It doesn't have to be what we're speaking about. I know I was also intending to speak about that with regards to the gangs in school. Maybe we'll touch on that if we don't have any calls. But just to remind people, when you call in and you are on air speaking to us, please listen to your phone, not through the TV. Don't try to have a conversation through the TV because it's a delay and it will confuse you. So please mute your television once you get on air with us. Keaton, with that said, as much as I actually don't necessarily disagree with some of what Terence Yalsing said, I do wonder to some extent if what he said, where he said it, when he said it, it was not necessarily appropriate because, again, what does that have to do with the budget?
So you're referring to his comments in respect to political loyalty and personal integrity, right? That's what you're referring to?
Yeah.
right? Because he was essentially suggesting that economic stability and prosperity are linked to political stability. And he went on to say that UNC is engaging in populist politics. You know, he's correct. He's actually correct in stating that,
Yes.
right? He's very much correct. We can have a debate. The UNC is actually engaging in populist politics, right? But I disagree with his comments when he warned the public to put God out of their thoughts. If the public puts God out of their thoughts and he left the UNC in office, they can expect negative consequences. I mean, given the last how many years of this performance of the administration, we can't speak favorably for any side right now, could we? You know, and put God out of their thoughts and this and that. Listen, putting all that nonsense aside, honestly speaking, Sean Michael Small, he's absolutely correct in saying that the UNC is engaged in populist politics. He would say that economic stability and prosperity are linked to political stability. And he should actually, again, look at the government's position. Are we economically, are we stable right now? No, we're not. We're not. I had an interview this morning with Professor Watson. And something he said, when you think about it, you know, as part of all this budget commentary debate, we keep speaking about diversification. Sean, Professor Watson pointed out, we don't even have the money to diversify. We don't even have, he said, you're going to need foreign exchange to make efforts to diversify, because diversification involves innovation and technology.
Yep.
We have to support all of that. We don't even have the foreign exchange to diversify. And that was very, very incredible what he was pushing forward. So when Terence Yalsing makes these comments about economic stability and prosperity being linked to political stability, is he referring to the PNM's failings? What is he referring to?
Or the PNM's political instability?
Put it this way, Sean Michael Small, when it comes to speaking about instability right now, it really falls in favor of Terence Yalsing's argument, because the UNC really is unstable as a political party. But again, I hope we understand what is being put forward to us.
Well, so here's the thing. With regards to statements, I believe that what he should have done is save that for a campaign platform. But I guess campaigning requires even more bubble than that, right? But I think that should be the limit to the bubble, to be honest, right? If you said that at a campaign platform, I'll accept it. I may not even like it there, but I'll accept it, right? Because to some extent, you're right, his arguments are reasonable. Or at least the principles behind them, the actual details and how he connected the dots, we could maybe debate. But for the budget debate, he should be talking about, this is what the Ministry of Health did. This is what the Ministry of Health spent. This is what we achieved. This is where maybe we could do better. This is where we have done all that we can. Things like that. And then maybe you could throw in, and this is how we did it better than the previous administration. This is how, given the promises of the administration for health, what it might mean for the budget. Things like that. Things like that with regards to job performance and expenditure. Things like that. But he's going into highly principled ideological political debates, some of which are not directly tied to his ministry. And his part of the budget debate should be about his ministry. He's the Minister of Health. In fact, that's what the Minister of Finance said. My colleagues will come and provide more information because I cannot speak in detail about everything that the government does. And having a political, ideological point in a budget debate, that should not be what it is. He is right with what he says, but I don't like that he said it in the budget debates.
No, it's silly season, Sean. So all these debates are now being used, being laid as platforms for political campaigns. But again, it's, you know, the minister, what they've been able to do, honestly, they've been able to portray that they have maintained our health sector. That's what it is. But honestly speaking, Sean Michael Small, you speak to anybody out there who has to go to the healthcare system, you can't even get drugs that are being described through the CDAP program. You can't even get the medicine that's being prescribed to you. You can't even get it. You go to the dispensary in Mount Hope after a doctor's visit, you can't get the drug. And a lot of the drugs and a lot of the supplements that were available previously, you're no longer getting it in Trinidad.
We have to cut you off there. We have Trinity on the line. Good morning, caller. You're on the air.
All right. Good morning, gentlemen.
Morning.
Right. You
Good
hear me
morning.
clearly.
Yes.
Calling from Trin City. First things first, I want to congratulate both of you on the guests you all had yesterday. It was good exchange. With regard to the shutting down of the refinery, Sean, and your colleague Kishan, the interview with Dr. Kirk Megu was very, very, very informative. And I think UE students and sixth formers had an understanding of of economics, and that was very, very insightful. Secondly, Kishan has said that the government believes that people have idiot mark on the forehead. I'll tell you something. The PNM supporters who will support them up to this day, they are the only ones with idiot mark on the forehead. Because history shows that the PNM is inherently corrupt, right? That's just it, from the 1960s to the present. So let's put that to rest once and for all. My next point is this. The PNM has always had an unholy alliance with elements of the underground, different layers of society, right? Because the PNM activists, back in the 60s and the 70s, when they were campaigning, especially the 70s, when they were campaigning, always had elements of activity, fellows who are close to the underground, whipping up support in the communities on the ground. The Kolontai PNM not going on the ground to do the bidding, they have those activists doing it, and those activists always had one foot in the village and one foot in crime. So that is inherent. The observation is the hotspots, quote unquote, they like to call them hotspots, but they are run by the PNM. The PNM strongholds is where the crime is. Do the math. It is as simple as that. Independent voices who come up in those hotspot areas or those stronghold areas against the PNM and wanting to do more, their voices are muffled, right? And I'll tell you something, while the UNC was in power some years ago, the 1%, a member of the 1% community said, listen, and I have it on good authority, that $3-point-something billion that passed through their hands in construction and giving out a lot of, what you may call it, subcontractors to these small men in the east-west corridor from south of the Carney down to the Southland, that happened. It's coming back to the 1%. So we will fund the PNM campaign to get back where we are supposed to be. That's the history of Trinidad. That is our demographics, and that is the way our culture is politically. Another time I'll call in and talk about the police and what they're investigating and what they're not investigating. Push on. Good job, fellas. Have a good day.
Thank you, caller.
Thank you. By the way, my name is Keaton, but that's fine.
With
That's
a
okay.
T.
Yeah, T. And very quickly, I'd just like to say, caller, you said his PNM supporters who have idiots written across their head. If any of the UNC supporters fall for any of the so-called promises that the opposition leader has made in her budget response, if you all have to listen to it and believe it, you all as UNC supporters have idiots slapped across your face as well, because they have not told us up to this point how they are going to achieve this. So they've just thrown comments out there, and that's what Terence Singh was speaking about, populist politics. You know, I don't know how the UNC going to plan to generate revenue. I don't know. They say we'll revive the energy sector. That doesn't tell me anything. So don't fall for that either.
The thing is, at least with the opposition, they are not in the government, so they can only speak so much. We have to give them a little bit of grace for that, right? Although you're right, they should at least have an outline of a plan. Meanwhile, the government, they're controlling the situation. They have all the numbers, they have all the figures. They don't want to tell us all of the numbers or all of the figures. And again, transparency works for you if you engage in it, and it works against you if you don't. A lack of transparency never works for you, ever. And I just wanted to add more things. This is a bit more of a deep dive into our politics, Keaton, because one could argue we don't have ideology in our politics. We don't have left and right in Trinidad, except, and it was ironically Dr. Kirk Megu who brought this up, and I do believe there's some truth. It might not be to a large degree, but I think it's significant enough, even if it's a small degree. The PNM does operate like a liberal party, and the UNC to some extent at times operates more like a conservative party, in the sense of the PNM seems to be more about big government, more regulation, more distribution of wealth. The UNC seems to be at times, not always, more about open things up, less regulation, more private entities. Not always, right? But what Mr. Trincity said there, I think it's very interesting because there's another parallel. The PNM, they are more socialist in some of their policies, and the beneficiaries of those socialist policies, some of those areas are also some of the areas that may or may not be considered hotspots. The Democrats in America are more socialist in their policies, and some of the cities which they control where they institute those policies may or may not be the areas of high crime and other sorts of immoral activity. And I do find it interesting, and why I think what Mr. Trincity said is somewhat true is because I could see the parallels of a similar situation with similar policies, with similar ideologies, and with similar biases having a similar result. It's not the be-all and end-all, right? It's not an orange-to-orange comparison. It's still an orange-to-apples comparison, but I think there's some truth to what he said, and perhaps we should, if we are courageous enough to be frank about these situations, we need to look into them, take the race talk out of it, by the way, because it's not about race, it's about demographics and about political policy and how those policies are engaged, in part utilizing race by the politicians. But take the race talk mostly out of it, right? It's not the fault of a race. And we can uncover the socioeconomic conditions that lead us to a similar result to what we see in similar situations of inner city urban environments, low income urban environments in the inner cities in North America, as we have seen it here, and we could also see it in parts of Europe as well, right? There's some linkages or some generalities where if we were willing, we could learn some lessons. And we could go even further, but I won't necessarily ascribe too much more to the political parties of the day. We have Move on the line. Good morning, caller, you're on the air. Caller, good morning.
Good morning, gentlemen.
Morning.
Greetings.
Sean and Keaton, every time I call, I always have to mention the fact that one of the biggest problems in this country, besides the crime, is lack of honesty.
Caller, you're breaking up. This is a different kind of, I don't know if... Caller, you might need to... Yeah, you might need to call back. This sounds a little different than what usually happens with our phone lines. It sounds almost like if you're on a cell phone or a wireless phone, there was a problem with the signal. So I don't know if that will help any situation. But Keaton, I don't know if you have any comments to make on what I just said or...
No, I don't actually. I really don't. I really don't. I'm just, honestly, Sean Michael Small, this budget debate, I was expecting nonsense to be spewed. But overall, as it is coming to its end, as a citizen of TNT, following that budget debate, and Sean, you and I sat down for the full 5 hours.
But Keaton, here's a question. Because Mr. Trincity and other callers have pointed out, PNM has been in power for the majority of our independence. So it's reasonable to say there's a lot of corruption that could be attributed to them because they were in charge most of the time and there was corruption all throughout. Then we have that infamous quote of, well, thankfully we are perceived as less corrupt. To what extent do you because the PNM is perceived as being somehow less corrupt, but to be fair to a lot of the callers,
that's according to caller members.
I was going to say it, but you said, right, but my point is, how is it? I don't know if those two things could be true. How is it that you are in power most of the time and you are less corrupt than your political opponents? I mean, I don't know how much corruption do you prescribe to the NAR, right?
No, I think that was in reference to the election in 2015 when the PNM won the election because they argue that it's argued that you saw a lot of development between 2010 and 2015 and you know, a lot of people still say that. They said you saw so much taking place between 2010 and 2015. A lot took place, but they lost the election.
Yeah.
One, because really the mismanagement existed and you saw it, and two, honestly speaking, the PNM in opposition, Dr. Keith Rawley's opposition, that PNM, they were excellent.
We have over back, but to agree with you, Keaton, how did I think she set a record for the number of ministers fired by one administration. With that said, move on the line. Good morning, caller. Welcome back.
Good morning, gentlemen. Are you hearing me clearly now?
Well, we're hearing you clearly. Yes.
All right. I'm on a different phone.
Okay.
As I was saying, one of the biggest problems, Sean, I see you were smiling, anyhow, one of the biggest problems we have in this country is lack of truth. This caller from Trin-City, what this man said, all was accurate, factual stuff. And you would hear people from day to day speaking about the PNM as if the PNM is something of worth, some political entity that is about right and justice, and they had ideas, and they brought the country up and law and order. And the PNM has been a failure from day one. The PNM, and I keep telling you all, the PNM is 90% responsible for the state this country is in. Why is it you will never hear a political scientist say this? You will never hear a criminologist say this. Why, the media at large, they speak about the PNM and give the PNM a level of credibility as if the PNM has a good record in office. And I mean, the reality is the PNM is a failed institution. The most efficient thing that the PNM has is their propaganda machinery. So that is really efficient. If they could have been running this country and running our institutions as efficient as their propaganda machinery works, this would have been a beautiful country. And the lies and deceit from professionals. I mean, I listen to them, I read in the papers what they say and stuff. These people are dishonest with no shame. The PNM is an institution that anybody who is loyal to their country, loyal to truth and decency, should run away from the PNM. That is not just my opinion. No, that's a fact. That's a fact. And that is at the heart of what is wrong with Trinidad and Tobago. No honesty, right? We lack courage to speak the truth, and that is killing us more than any crime, more than any disease, more than anything else. When will that stop? Over and out, gentlemen.
Thank you, caller. I'll just say this. Their PR machine may take a hit due to some of the instability that is not fully ventilated to the public, and I will leave that there. Also, shamelessness, I did say the Minister of Finance, he needs to be careful with his own pot calling kettle black statements, because after what happened with the Auditor General, amongst other things, but that was one of the more recent things, I think it's shameless. This knows no bounds, but that's just my opinion.
I was listening to what the caller was saying, and what came to my mind is that he's saying that this is fact, and the propaganda machine. If they ran institutions like the propaganda machine, talk about efficiency. But the fact is, even if you want to call the PNM a failed institution, who has won the majority of the elections in TNT?
That's the sad truth.
Who has, and you pointed out before the caller go in, who has actually been in government more for independent TNT than any other party? And apart from which, put it this way, one can argue the PNM is seen as a stable institution as compared to what is currently being offered. It's amazing how the Prime Minister, even the Minister of Health, are pointing out those 5 MPs who are now backbenched, as they say, the dissidents. But that's the whole point. The perception that exists is that the People's National Movement is a far more stable political entity and party as compared to the current opposition. And you might want to say it's fact, but at the end of the day, call everybody's entitled to their opinions. The PNM has won most elections. It's hard you can't argue against that. You can't.
The thing is, and I think this is where the caller from MOFA, when you want to make statements like that, there's always risk involved, right? Because we're talking, at the end of the day, it's subjective. The general premise of what you're saying, I don't think we disagree with, but maybe the details and how you frame it is where we could debate, right? Because I would say that part of the blame is with the voters. As Keaton, as you pointed out, they were elected. They were not like dictators that held on to power for most of the last 60 years. They were elected for most of the elections. by the voters. And I understand the propaganda machine works. Fool me once, shame on me. Sorry, fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice. If I let you do it to me, shame on me. If I let you do it to me, not just twice now, we're talking about, I don't know how many elections the PNM has won, right? Like at what point is it that we're going to see a certain level of result and we're not going to demand for something better? And that's where Tobago has won up Trinidad. Regardless of how the TPP works out, at least right now, even with the AudioGate scandal that I'm not going to forget, they decided, and rightfully so, and I agree with them for this, and I think that there's still a chance that it could work out. We want something better. And to the point where technically it's a Watson Duke party, but when that whole internal strife happens, the rest of the party said we're going in a different direction, and I believe the island went with them because they understood the mission, the assignment. It's not about, political loyalty to an individual. It's about who is going to give us the best chance to get something that is not the same old crap that we've gotten before. So the TPP has a shot. They still have a shot to build something different for Tobago and by extension the country. And to what extent now are Trinidadians going to not necessarily, because they don't necessarily have the same opportunity right now, but if they got an opportunity, will they go for it? And I would hazard to say that there's at least a 50% chance that they wouldn't.
Is that it?
I guess we are over time. I don't know why I'm thinking that we still have time, Keaton, but we should probably close the show with that. Yes, I understand what the caller said. The PNM and their corruption has a part to play with the lack of development in the country, but the voters are complicit, at least to some extent, with it. Keaton, your closing thoughts?
Well, Anita Haynes said it best, right? We can complain as much as we want. We can have commentary. We can have comment. At the end of the day, show it with your vote. Show it with your vote. You have a beautiful opportunity. You are so fortunate, and there are many countries in this world who don't have it.
True.
Where you can come out and you can choose whom you want to be, whom you want to see form the next government. Utilize that opportunity. Everybody will always have opinions. Everybody will always be. You can't satisfy everyone. At the end of the day, you can't. So with all that we are stressed on about and all that we are complaining about, at the end of the day, show your finger in the next election. Words mean nothing. Your vote matters more than anything else. So let's see what happens. Let us see what happens.
As Mr. Sans Fernando would say, I would agree with him on this. If you really don't think you could vote for the PNM or the UNC and there's no other alternative, then spoil your ballot and at least be counted that way. That's if you genuinely feel that you cannot vote for anybody on the slate, then at least do that. Don't stay home, because if you stay home, you'll be part of the complacency.
Yeah, I'm going to stand up in the hot sun to spoil my ballot.
Yes, oh gosh, Keaton is one day, Keaton.
Yes, something to think about. I would encourage you to vote. I would encourage you to, and put it this way.
I'm hoping something changes, and there's something to vote for. I don't know who I would vote for yet.
Vote for the individual whom you think will best represent your constituency.
That's a good point.
Vote for the individual whom you think will be the best MP. Put it that way. Vote for said individual. And at the end of the day, majority forms the next government. We shall see.
Yeah, if we start voting like that, eventually the political parties will have to change. They will have to change because we won't accept the party politics of yesterday. But with that said, thanks all the callers. Thanks to Keaton for joining me. It's been a week. There's been stories that we haven't gotten to. Don't know if we'll get into next week, that whole situation with the gangs in schools. There's more to that, I think, than meets the eye. It's a bit more nuanced. But with that said, I will just say this. Remember your allegiance to the Republic and stay safe out there. Keaton, close the show.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, today is a good day to have a good day and hopefully a good weekend ahead. And Sean and I will see you again very soon. Hopefully. Bye-bye.
WESN
This is 10 questions. I'm Andy Johnson. The distance from where we should be in the world in going forward on our commitments with climate change.
The effects of climate change that cannot be accounted for, it's called loss and damage, and we're seeing loss and damage happening so much more in this decade and the previous decade.
The principal term there was this question of the correspondent banking issues.
That is why we're trying to build capacity with this country here, Trinidad and Tobago, and other countries in the region.
Man is not showing any signs of stopping or even slowing down. More than half of the forest in Trinidad is already gone.
All the plants and all the animals and all of the nice clean water and fresh air and everything had to be on this planet for humanity to have a chance.
We have small change when it comes to countries that can take decisions, and when they speak, the world listens.
The General Assembly is a very democratic forum. And Trinidad and Tobago has the same vote as Canada, in spite of the obvious difference in size.
Money is something we all deal with, but how many of us truly understand it? What if you could make better decisions